Have you ever been in a crowded room, music playing, glasses clinking, people laughing, and felt like you were watching it all through glass? You're standing there, you're nodding at the right moments. You even smile when everyone else does, but internally, something feels off. While others seem energized by the noise, your mind is busy decoding it. You're not just hearing the conversation, you're analyzing the pauses, the slight shift in tone, the forced laugh that lasts a fraction too long, the tension between two friends who insist they're fine. And suddenly, you feel like an alien. Not because you hate people, not because you're antisocial, but because you're experiencing the room on an entirely different frequency. While most people are swimming on the surface, you're scanning the depth. You're predicting how the conversation will unfold. You're sensing who feels insecure, who's performing, who wants approval. And after an hour, sometimes less, you're exhausted. Not bored, not rude, just neurologically drained. If this feels familiar, this video is for you. Today we're talking about the psychology of intuitive introverts. Anhung ngoi huang noi truk gyak. The ones who don't just see the world, they decode it. For a long time, you may have wondered if something was wrong with you. Why can everyone else thrive in this chaos while you crave silence, meaning, and real connection? Here's the truth. You're not broken. You're not awkward. You're not too sensitive. You're wired for depth in a world that rewards volume. And what feels like isolation might actually be the first clue to understanding how your intuitive, introverted mind truly works. So what's actually happening inside your brain? For decades, introversion was misunderstood as shyness or poor social skills. But modern psychology and neuroscience tell a very different story. The difference between introverts and extroverts isn't about how much they like people, it's about how their brains process stimulation. It begins with dopamine. Dopamine is the brain's reward chemical. In highly stimulating environments, loud music, fast conversation, novelty, extroverted brains light up. They feel energized, focused, alive. But the introverted brain has a lower threshold for dopamine sensitivity. What feels exciting to others can feel overwhelming to you. Too many voices, too much movement, too much unpredictability. Your nervous system reaches saturation faster. Instead, your brain prefers a different neurochemical pathway, acetylcholine. This neurotransmitter is linked to the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. It activates when you focus deeply, reflect internally, read, create, or engage in meaningful one-on-one dialogue. Solitude doesn't drain you, it restores you. Now add the intuitive dimension. In personality psychology, including models like the Myers-Briggs type indicator, intuitive types process information through patterns, abstraction, and future possibilities, rather than concrete sensory data. Neuroimaging studies suggest that introverted, intuitive individuals rely more heavily on internally oriented brain networks, particularly regions associated with memory integration, long-term planning, and the default mode network, the system active during deep reflection and meaning-making. In simple terms, when someone asks you a question, your brain doesn't take the shortest route to an answer. It runs the long road. It checks past experiences. It projects future outcomes. It scans emotional context. It searches for the underlying pattern. That pause before you respond, that's not awkwardness. It's depth in motion. So the question becomes, were you born this way? Or did life shape you into this? The honest answer is both. Research in developmental psychology shows that temperament is partly biological. Some children are naturally more sensitive to stimulation, more observant, more reflective. Even as toddlers, they pause before entering new environments. They watch before they act. They process before they speak. But temperament is only the beginning. Environment sharpens the wiring. An intuitive introvert who grows up in a calm, validating home may develop into a thoughtful strategist, an artist, a counselor, someone secure in their depth. But place that same child in a chaotic, emotionally unpredictable, or highly critical environment, and something else can happen. They become hyper-observant. They learn to scan tone changes, facial shifts, subtle tension in the air, not out of curiosity, but out of survival. Many intuitive introverts didn't just develop pattern recognition as a talent, they developed it as protection. When you grow up needing to read the room to stay safe, your nervous system becomes finely tuned to microsignals. Over time, that vigilance feels like intuition. Some intuitive introverts were born observant, others became observant because they had to be. This doesn't mean your depth is trauma, but it does mean your story matters. Understanding whether your intuition comes from temperament, adaptation, or both is powerful, because it shifts the narrative from "this is just who I am" to "this is how I was shaped." And what is shaped can also be refined. If your brain is wired for depth, what does that actually give you? One of the most powerful cognitive advantages of intuitive introverts is elite pattern recognition. While others focus on isolated details, your mind automatically zooms out. It looks for structure, repetition, inconsistencies. You're not just absorbing information, you're mapping it. In cognitive science, this ability is sometimes described as subconscious data integration. Your brain collects micro-observations, tone shifts, behavioral habits, timing patterns, logical gaps, and compresses them into a single impression. To you, it feels like a gut feeling, but neurologically, it's rapid, unconscious processing. This is why you often sense outcomes before they unfold. You meet someone and feel uneasy, even though nothing obvious is wrong. Months later, their behavior confirms what you picked up in seconds. You weren't psychic. You were detecting pattern deviation. Intuitive introverts are especially skilled at what psychologists call thin slicing, drawing accurate conclusions from small fragments of data. Whether it's an INTP analyzing systems, an INTJ forecasting strategy, an INFP interpreting symbolism, or an INFJ reading emotional subtext, the mechanism is the same: pattern synthesis. But here's the nuance: intuition is powerful, not infallible. Your brain is also vulnerable to confirmation bias. If you expect rejection, you may unconsciously filter for signs of it. If you've been betrayed before, you may over-detect a threat. The same pattern recognition that gives you foresight can amplify anxiety if left unchecked. So the real superpower isn't just intuition, it's calibrated intuition. The ability to ask, is this insight based on evidence or fear? When balanced, your intuitive edge allows you to see the forest while others are still counting trees. And in a complex world, that kind of cognition isn't just rare, it's invaluable. If pattern recognition is your cognitive gift, empathy is your emotional one. Many intuitive introverts don't just notice what people say, they feel what people don't say. Neuroscience offers one explanation: mirror neurons. These brain cells activate not only when we perform an action, but when we observe someone else performing it. They help us simulate another person's internal state. For highly intuitive introverts, this system often runs at high sensitivity. You walk into a room and immediately sense the atmosphere. The unspoken resentment, the insecurity behind the confidence, the sadness hidden under humour. It's as if you have emotional X-ray vision. But empathy this strong comes with complexity. Attachment theory helps explain why. If you developed an anxious attachment style, your intuition may hyper-focus on subtle cues of rejection. A delayed text becomes a signal. A shift in tone feels like withdrawal. Your pattern recognition locks onto threat. If you lean avoidant, your intuition may instead scan for emotional overwhelm. You read intensity early and pull back before you feel engulfed. This is why intuitive introverts often experience relationships intensely. You don't engage halfway, You bond through depth, vulnerability, meaning, and because you can read emotional nuance so well, you sometimes attract people who crave being understood, including those who unconsciously rely on you for regulation. Empathy makes you a profound friend, partner, or counselor, but without boundaries, it can turn you into an emotional sponge. The key isn't turning off your empathy, it's learning to feel without absorbing, to understand without carrying what isn't yours. Depth is powerful, but depth is heavy. When your brain is constantly scanning patterns, projecting outcomes, and processing emotional subtext, it rarely truly rests. Even in silence, your mind is active, replaying conversations, refining ideas, revisiting decisions. This is where reflection quietly turns into rumination. Healthy reflection helps you grow. It extracts lessons. It integrates experience. Rumination, on the other hand, loops without resolution. It asks, what if without ever landing? And for intuitive introverts, that loop can become relentless. This is the root of analysis paralysis. Because you can see multiple possibilities, you also see multiple risks. You don't just make decisions, you simulate consequences. And sometimes the fear of choosing imperfectly becomes more paralyzing than the choice itself. Then there's overstimulation burnout, what many call the introvert hangover. After extended social interaction, especially in loud or emotionally charged environments, your nervous system hits a wall. You may feel irritable, foggy, detached. It's not that you dislike people, it's that your cognitive load has maxed out. And over time, repeated overstimulation can lead to withdrawal. Not because you want isolation, but because isolation feels safer than exhaustion. The danger is when solitude becomes avoidance. There's also an important distinction here. Depth is not depression. Loving introspection is not the same as losing interest in life. But when exhaustion, hopelessness, and withdrawal persist, it's worth paying attention. Your mind is a powerful instrument, but even powerful systems need recovery cycles. Without them, depth can quietly turn into disconnection. Now, place this deep, internally wired nervous system into modern American culture, a culture that celebrates volume. From classrooms that reward the fastest hand raised, to corporate environments that equate confidence with competence, American society has long favored extroverted traits. Speak up, network, sell yourself, be visible, be dynamic, be on. In many workplaces, the loudest voice in the room is often perceived as the leader, even when the quietest person has already mapped out the long-term strategy in their head. For intuitive introverts, this creates a subtle but constant friction. You may feel behind, not because you lack insight, but because you don't advertise it. You may hesitate to interrupt, to self-promote, to dominate a conversation. Meanwhile, hustle culture moves fast, rewards charisma, and rarely pauses for depth. Over time, this bias can distort your self-perception. You might start believing you're less ambitious, less capable, less competitive, but here's the reality. The system is optimized for speed and stimulation, not necessarily for foresight or nuance. Your strength isn't rapid reaction, it's considered response. And in a world addicted to noise, the ability to think before speaking is not a weakness. It's a competitive advantage, though, just one that doesn't always look loud. There's something deeply validating about discovering your personality type. For many intuitive introverts, frameworks like the Myers-Briggs type indicator feel like someone finally handed you a mirror. Suddenly, your intensity makes sense. Your need for solitude has language. Your difference feels named. But here's the quiet danger. When insight turns into identity, identity can become limitation. It's easy to start saying, I can't do that, I'm an introvert. I'm bad at networking, that's just my type. I overthink, it's how my brain works. At first, these statements feel self-aware. Over time, they can become self-fulfilling. Personality frameworks describe tendencies, not ceilings. They explain your starting point, not your final form. The brain is plastic. Neural pathways adapt. Social confidence can be learned. Emotional regulation can be strengthened. When you over-identify with a label, you risk shrinking to fit it. You are not a four-letter code. You are a dynamic system shaped by biology, experience, choice, and growth. Understanding your intuitive introversion should feel liberating, not confining. It should help you manage your energy, not excuse your avoidance. Your type explains your wiring. It does not define your potential, and the moment you remember that, the cage quietly opens. Understanding your wiring is empowering, but insight alone isn't enough. Intuitive introverts don't thrive by forcing themselves into louder versions of other people. They thrive by designing environments that respect depth. Think of this as energy architecture. First, social budgeting. Your energy is finite. Instead of saying yes by default, begin allocating it intentionally. One meaningful dinner may nourish you more than 3 large gatherings. A focused 2-hour meeting may be sustainable. A full day of back-to-back stimulation may not. Protect recovery windows, the way athletes protect rest days. Second, structured solitude. Solitude shouldn't be accidental. It should be scheduled. 90 minutes of uninterrupted deep work. A solo walk without headphones. A weekly input detox from constant digital noise. Your brain consolidates insights in quiet. Without that space, clarity fades. Third, layered boundaries. Emotional boundaries. You're not responsible for regulating everyone's feelings. Informational boundaries limit exposure to chaotic news cycles and draining content. Digital boundaries. Not every message requires immediate access to you. Fourth, career alignment. Intuitive introverts tend to excel in roles that reward foresight, analysis, creativity, counseling, writing, strategy, research, design, environments that allow autonomy and depth over constant performance. Micromanagement and perpetual urgency often erode your cognitive strengths. And finally, externalize your inner world. Journal, build, write, create. Speak your insights somewhere. When your internal landscape has no outlet, it becomes pressure. When it has expression, it becomes contribution. You don't need to become louder to succeed. You need systems that let your depth compound. When your life is structured around how your brain actually works, exhaustion decreases and impact increases. For most of your life, you may have felt out of sync. Too quiet in loud rooms, too deep in fast conversations, too reflective in a culture obsessed with speed. But what if your difference was never a flaw? The world does not suffer from a shortage of noise. It suffers from a shortage of reflection. From people willing to pause before reacting. From minds that look beyond the immediate and ask, what does this really mean? Intuitive introverts are not here to compete with volume. You are here to see patterns others miss, to feel undercurrents others ignore, to think beyond the moment everyone else is reacting to. That is not weakness. That is long-range vision. The quiet revolution isn't about becoming louder. It's about recognizing that depth is power and using it deliberately. When you stop trying to be normal and start building a life aligned with your wiring, something shifts. You don't disappear in the noise. You rise above it. If this video helped you feel understood, maybe even for the first time, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear which part resonated most with you. And if you want more conversations about the quiet, complex parts of the human mind, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You're not alone here, and your depth matters. Thank you for watching.